Morning all, and welcome to this morning's Strategy Cafe. Lovely to see everybody online. Looking forward to chatting to a few of you live with Em at 9, once we sort of talked through this crazy idea of creativity. We're going to get to that in a second and try and live up to the title, Why You Are Not Creative Enough and How to Change That. We are lucky to have an absolutely wonderful executive coach and professional clown in Em here to talk us through that. But before we get going, I just wanted to mention that after this session on creativity, of course, our next session is going to be on happiness. Of course it is. That's super interesting. It's on the 26th of May, I believe. So mark your diaries for that. We're going to be talking to neuroscientists and head of the Happiness Index, happen also to be father and son, and discussing how you can harness the energy of happiness to drive performance within your team and your business and great culture and all those wonderful, beautiful things. So you can come and debate that point with us in May. Look forward to seeing you all there. So, hello, Em.
Hello, morning. I've got the Pharrell song in my head now. Because you're happy, come along if you feel, because you just talked about happiness. How are you?
Oh, really good. How are you? Very nice to see you. So you're a so-called creative.
I apparently am. Yes, this is the rumors. I've checked my CV and I believe I can call myself a creative.
Excellent. Introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about you.
I can. Good morning. Hello, everybody. Lovely to meet you through the powers that is Zoom webinar. I'm indeed Em Stroud. There's a bit of stuff about me on the beautiful slide. And sort of over and above all of that sort of stuff that I tangibly do, including my book that Nick said, make sure you mention it. That's right. Lessons from a Clown. Here it is. Because I really am a clown. I'm on a mission really to help the world laugh more, think more and play more. Because I think when we're all doing that as human beings, then surely the world can only become a better and a brighter and a more successful and more abundant world. So that's me in a nutshell. I have a 10-year-old son who has just walked to school by himself for the first time, and about a minute ago he texted me. So we're okay. My child made it to school safely. We're all good. That's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's important. Well done, and well done him.
Yes.
So look, let's get into this creativity thing in a second by doing a poll. So I think this kind of was in line with what we had from the online. Not enough space in my day, too busy. A couple of people feeling not a creative person. And then a nod for not the right tools. And I'd love to have the comment about other. So comment in chat, please, what the other is. So there you go. That's a bit of a sense for what is holding this group back this morning, which I think was quite similar to what we saw online. So just as we get into this, I put some quotes up just to get the creative juices going. Creativity can solve almost any problem. The creative act, the defeat of habit by originality overcomes everything. This one is kind of a bit polarizing, this next one by Peter Drucker. I kind of quite like it, but business has only two functions, marketing and innovation. I think he says after this, everything else is just admin. It's quite a strong comment, right? Not sure I agree, but you know.
Anybody's an accountant watching, sorry.
Business has to be evolving. It has to be fun. It has to exercise your creative interest. So maybe not surprised that Branson says that. And then I love this last one. It's quite funny. Creative is one of the last remaining legal ways to gain an unfair advantage over the competition. I think that kind of nails it from a business point of view in a kind of a straight kind of way. Emma, what is creativity?
I think it really is a space and a most human process that allows us to come up with the most incredible solutions for challenges. It allows us to come up with ideas, words, sounds, actions, products, innovations that joins things together that other people perhaps haven't thought about or didn't even know that they needed. And I think creativity is one of the most human things that we all have. And yet, unfortunately, so many people believe that they're not creative. And I would challenge, because I think every single one of us is inherently creative. It's just that there's a framing, hence me doing a frame around my face, almost like Vogue there, I just realized. But there's a framing around what creativity is and what it looks like. And dependent on your job role, quite often dictates whether you view you're creative or not. And I believe that all of us are creative.
Do you think, so that's quite interesting. So do you think if I say to myself, maybe from experience, right? So maybe it feels like there's some truth in it. But if I say to myself, I'm not creative, do you think that's deterministic? Is that?
I think it definitely plays a part. Yeah, it's a bit like everything. If you language anything of, well, today's not going to be a great day, it probably won't be a great day. So I think if you are telling yourself I'm not creative, then I'd be really curious to find out, so what made you believe that? Because every single one of us that's on this brilliant webinar right now and everyone watching was at some point a child. And when you are a child, the world of creativity hasn't been told that it's not open to you. Now, of course, when we're creative as a kid, it generally manifests through play. And of course, each and every single one of us will play in different ways when we were a kid. So therefore, there's a natural equation between play, in my mind, and creativity when we're younger. And then as we become more adult, it's like, well, I've got to be serious. I am a lawyer. I'm not creative because I'm a lawyer. Or I'm a doctor. I'm not creative because I'm a doctor. But actually, you want to be able to have that creativity of thought, that creativity of action, even in the most, perhaps viewed as the most straight occupations, like I just mentioned.
Amazing. I love it. I just want to throw this idea at you as well. I came across this in my science, and it made me quite interested in the concept of what creativity might be. I love the way you answered that in terms of sort of connecting things, making connections that otherwise are not seen. I wanted to also just take it into this frame of problem solving. So the way I'm curious about it, so I think on the one hand, you can see that there are other creatures of the world that have problem solving skills. So like squid and octopuses and corvids, good at problem solving. So why would they evolve that? And I think the answer is probably it's an efficient way to find stuff that you need. If you're able to join the dots and make sense out of things, you can get access to the hidden food, right? Or an interesting way to find a life partner and start a family, and the things that human beings and other creatures need. So it feels like it probably is an evolved ability. And then what struck me was that once you've got it, you can do it just for the fun of it. And you do see that, like, people don't just exercise their creativity to solve the daily problems of life. They also just are enjoying the process of being creative for its own right. Does that make sense to you?
It makes perfect sense. And I think, you can be creative, because you've chosen to look up and you've seen the world and you realize that we're all part of this bigger thing that is Earth. You can be creative in your thought process or how you show up to your own self-care. It doesn't necessarily have to be, right, this is my creative process time and I'm going to sit down and I've got a problem and I must think creatively. Because that by its very nature means that it's boxed. And if it's boxed, then you put a pressure on it. And one of the things that I'm really exploring at the moment as I'm researching my second book is this whole process about how do we approach these different facets of deeply human. And creativity is such a human trait. And yet we're scared of it. And also sometimes I believe that we try and force it, especially in the business world. I think we can go, right, here's my creative thinking time. And actually, one of the things that I've learned through a practice of 20 plus years of being a creative and a business owner, I think if you try and push creativity into a 1 hour session, that's when people find it really frustrating because you're trying to push. And actually creativity requires space and it requires free time. And it requires those things that I know in business is hard, where you go, I've got 2 hours in my diary that's free and I'm going to go for a walk. And you just let stuff cogitate in the back of your head. And then suddenly something will appear. But when we're constantly pushing creativity,
Mm-hmm.
then that's when we find it really, it doesn't work, in my humble opinion. And to give a tangible example, a couple of years ago, I knew I wanted to start a podcast, and I was like, well, I want to do a podcast and I'm going to make it like this, and I've got this time and I need to think about it. And I tried these things and I was forcing it, and none of them worked. And then I took a couple of days, and of course I can because I work for myself, etc. Took a couple of days, went down to the Kent, walked along the coast, and just was like, I'm going to have a couple of days just to be. And I hadn't gone with the intention, must come up with podcast idea. But with the space, suddenly this, I like making people laugh. Okay, cool. I am a clown. Okay. And then before I knew it, these sort of amorphous ideas all came to the front of my head.
Amazing. God, you've touched on so many things there. So while we're talking about the barriers that prevent us from being creative as a starting point, so one of the things that you just talked to is almost that your creativity is like a mindful experience. You can't force it; it has to be you something that you can be. I feel like we have these two voices that go on inside. I'm sure there are many, but there are these two dominant kind of tonalities, if you like, I'm going to call it rumination.
Okay.
So this voice here, this ruminating voice here is saying, I can't solve this problem. This problem is too difficult. Why have I got this problem? This is really hard for me. I'm not creative enough to do this, right? And so that might be sabotaging my ability to access creativity. And I'm going to say also there's a sort of tonality of anxiety around it or fear around it. And I'd say that just ask you about this. So, when you have a creative idea or an intuition, there can be a fear of speaking it out loud is it a stupid idea? Will anyone just laugh at me? Are they going to jump all over me for saying that silly thing? But then you have this other voice. It's also a rumination, right? But it's got a different tonality. It's sort of, I wonder how to solve this problem. This problem is really interesting to me. What about this? What about that? What about the other? What if I did so and so and so and so? You see what I mean? It's still an internal ruminatory kind of voice, but its tonality is solving the thing, searching for opportunities or connections. Does that relate? How do you respond to those sort of ideas?
Yeah, I think all of us, I really hope everybody watching this feels like we all have those inner voices that perhaps aren't always the most kind and helpful. And I think we can quite often pay attention to that more easily because we're comfortable with it. And having worked with so many, we're all human, right? And all of us go, this could be a bit of a silly idea. Yeah, I better not say that. We've all had those moments. And yeah, I love that, Sarah. Yeah, you're right. Not minding mistakes. Yeah, because if you're being creative, you can't be making a mistake. You're just building on offers. And I think this other idea of, having this other voice that is the curious voice. And that's the one which we need to pay more attention to. So rather than going, I must find the solution, I've got to be creative. It's like, it's finding the joy in the challenge.
Yeah.
Because if you find the joy in the challenge, suddenly it opens up so many doors. And it's like, I could do that. I wonder if there's that. Or I wonder if there's that. And then suddenly you can't help but just build on your own ideas.
Yeah, and I get that. That's so powerful. So, I mean, in this space, we're sort of talking about, and this, I think, speaks to John's point as well, why people are not creative, perhaps finding an interest in solving problems. So, wanting to do it. So, enjoying doing it. And so here we're just talking about the idea of what inhibits it. So the fear of it. Right. Now that can be in myself, which is this ruminatory voice, which says, don't say something so stupid as that. And so these wonderful ideas that don't emerge, I sometimes think, like, if all of the creative ideas were expressed, what would we hear, as opposed to just kept on the inside? It would be amazing. There'd be some wacky ones in there, right? But in a way, we can choose once we've heard them. I love listening to Grayson Perry once say that in order to be creative, you have to be relaxed. Does that make sense to you? And do you relate to that as in your practice of creativity? I think you do. Yeah,
I do. So this week, I'm actually on my own creative week. So I have a week, it's generally the last week of the month. where I block out my diary and it's my creative week. And I've got various creative projects going on. And if I just take Monday, because this is in my head, so I'm working with a fellow performer, and we're creating a sort of series of YouTube videos around a clown and a character and all of this world. And when I think, and she and I have worked together, we've done creative projects for, 20 years. And the key about the success of that, and then also the speed that we can develop things, is because we are relaxed. And it sounds daft, but one of the things that I really witness, so if there's business and there's performing, I'm bang in the middle of it. And one of the things that I really witness in terms of the state that business people are in is that and I include myself in that, when we're in our business mode, when we have a break, we go back and we check our emails and we kind of jump back in, better see what clients are wanting, all of this stuff. And I clocked Monday and I put my out of office on my, on my emails. And when we were meeting to start off with, we had a half-hour sit and have a coffee and had a catch up. Then we went into the world of work. Then we had another break. We didn't go on our phones. We didn't go into another world. And so that state that Grace and Perry, in terms of being relaxed, I think it's about really thinking about the whole construct of your whole day. It's not just a short burst of time. And I have to be in that place. Otherwise, how can I possibly expect myself to hear whatever great ideas I've got?
Yeah, you've kind of got to have the capacitousness to sit with the ideas as they arise. And
I love that word, capacitiveness. I mean, that's the best word I've ever heard before 9 a.m. Brilliant.
Thank you. So let's just talk about enabling then. I guess the first thing I want to ask you is I feel like there's a paradox here, because you're a professional clown. So those two words kind of suggest it, right? So you're not just a clown, you're a professional clown. So it suggests that there's a discipline involved. So in enabling creativity, how do you square away this idea of both discipline and, I guess, looseness?
It's a really, I think if there is a craft for either acting or the craft of clowning or the craft of improvising, that are three crafts that I am still developing and practice, there is without doubt a discipline. And the discipline is about creating boundaries so that you then have the freedom to play in whatever way, whichever one the crafts are. And I think quite often when people think about creativity, it's so vast, the blank page is so vast. But actually, in order to really allow myself to fly, and I can only talk about my own truth, there has to be boundaries and there has to be structure and there has to be a discipline to go back to it. So I recently just did a top-up week of clowning. There is such a thing. And within this
clowning.
top-up clowning, yes, exactly.
Okay.
So in essence, I had
the clown level had come down a little bit.
Yeah, the clown level had come, so I need to top up. I need to top up again. And when I went there, the reason that I did it was just to go and, in essence, was to, reconnect with not only the skills and people and my peers, but actually it's about going back into the space and then repeating certain exercises just so it's in my muscle memory. And there was something on the fourth day, we were doing the same exercise that we did every morning. And I've got to be honest, my brain went, I don't want to do this again. I've already done it 3 times. And I was in the business hurry up mode. I was like, I've done this. I've taken everything I can from this. And then I did it. And by the end of it, it was the most profound experience I'd had of that exercise ever in my life.
Yeah.
And there's a discipline about showing up to the same processes so that you can get gifts from them.
Yes, I love that. But it's so hard, isn't it? Because you come to this barrier of nothingness.
Yep.
You're working hard on it. And you're thinking, surely there is a creativity, and our heart is here somewhere. It must be, but nothing.
Yeah.
And that's uncomfortable. You sit there with that nothing, thinking, oh, it's so frustrating.
Yep.
I have no inspiration. But and suddenly there's more. Suddenly there is more there. That's so fascinating. So part of the discipline then is being prepared to sit with it when it's uncomfortable and there's nothing there, and being open
which is
to
the polar, isn't it? It's the polar of what we're told we should be doing in business.
Okay. So I love that. So I think we've touched on things there that could be really practical for people in their team. So I guess we're all thinking, okay, how can we enable our teams and how can we enable ourselves? So take down the level of fear, create deliberate spaces, try and find the balance between discipline and looseness. So there's work in creativity and it needs the time. Yep. I think that's kind of the thing that you said. So what can people do to, I guess, avoid the worry, anxiety, contagion? If they say, look, let's have a creative space, there might be an instant worry, but we're not doing anything. We're not going to get anything done. Can we be more creative more quickly? So how can we create real spaces for people without disrupting like the normal flow of business and getting stuff done? How do we do that and enable it?
I think there's a couple of things. I think on an individual level, in terms of from a leadership perspective, you have to model it. So I sort of always go back to, in terms of time, most business leaders that I work with are like, I don't have enough time, everything's too busy, etc. And actually, we are in control of our time. So if we're in a position where we are a leader and we lead a culture of a business, we have to be putting actual time in our diaries where people can see it, where you go, this is my thinking time, this is my reflective time, whatever you want to call it, because that's creativity. And you have to tangibly put it in your diary. And then just notice how quickly people can try and chip away at that time because they don't view it as important. So one practical thing is literally doing that. And then I think team-wise, one of the things that I've seen that works unbelievably well is you just go, right, a day a month, we're not responding to clients. A day a month, we tell them and we go, this is our day where we think about what we do and we're going to come up with amazing solutions. And you just tell your clients, if it's super, super of emergency, pick up the phone. I guarantee none of them will phone you. And you just have a day where you go, right, sales team, I want you to have a day just thinking about selling. But without getting into the weeds of here's our targets, here's our outcomes. Just have a day. Play with the process of it. What ideas have you had? And as soon as you do that, and having worked with a few businesses that have done that, they're like, in a day, it was amazing because there was no pressure about the outcome. But the outcomes came because the process was relaxed.
I also feel that point about doing it together, and John's going to put this in the team chat, some great comments in the team chat. Maybe we should just pick those up. John says, big cultural barrier, friends, colleagues who are in business mode are just not interested, and it's much easier in a team, but hard to have one. You're kind of alluding to that there. I think I personally find I need something to be in dialogue with.
Yeah.
Creativity is a sort of a feedback loop. It's not just me on my own. Well, I need something, some grit in the oyster, as it were, to play off, to build on. So having somebody else who I'm relaxed with and who's in the right mode helps, because those ideas build quickly.
Yeah.
Or if I'm on my own, I can write and I can look at what I've written and reflect on what I've written. So I have to have some kind of feedback. Does that relate to you? Make sense?
Yeah, I think there are different, depending on what the business need is, dictates, I think, how the creative process will respond, and also how we are as people. Because for some people, they would really benefit from just having a few hours just to go away and think and then come and share those ideas. Whereas others, depending on personality process, would be like you and I, to listen and respond. And I work in dialogue with lots of different people, and one of my main creative collaborators, she'll quite often ask me questions. I'll improvise. This is for shows. I'll improvise something. She'll take stuff down. We'll film it. And then she'll then go, right, Em, go away. Now go and write some things about that idea. Then I'll come back and then we'll play with it. So there's different parts, there's different parts of the process, right?
I've got some great stuff in the commentary here, so we should maybe pick it up together. So Jess, right at the top of the call, I make excuses. I don't prioritize creative projects, even though I enjoy it so much when I do creative things. So I think that's speaking to this idea of making time for it, right?
Yeah.
And putting some structure in there. Creativity from schooling creates associations with art, but not necessarily problem solving. And I think that's interesting, isn't it? So you can frame it about, creative, the creatives. And I feel it's way wider than that. And I think we've been talking about it as almost like a universal skill.
Yeah, some of the most, I remember working with an engineer and, he ran a multi-million-pound manufacturing business. When I first met him, he said, Em, I'm not creative. And I was like, you are one of the most creative people that I know. It's just that you draw straight lines, whereas I might draw wiggly ones. And that shifted it for him. He went, oh, yeah.
So I'm curious, just as we get to the 9 o'clock point, what are for you, is creativity a skill that you can build, Emma? And just to David's point on here, and is it innate in us? Does everyone have it? Is it a skill that you can build? And what are your top tips for building your creativity skill?
I think everybody is, and I really hear you, David. I think, it's about really meeting people with where they're at.
Yeah.
I think you're so right, David. The risk-averse, process-driven people cannot be taught how to be creative. I think the question underneath what you've said, for me anyway, is, are they open to exploring what that might mean for them? And of course, how creativity manifests for everybody is different. And again, that whole naturally creative might struggle with boundaries and processes. I put my hand up. If you'd met me in my early 30s, I'd have been like, don't like structure, don't like it. Whereas now, structure is what allows me to fly. And I have definitely learned that. So I think it's about meeting people, as I say, where they're at, and depending on how they've been schooled and what they view creativity is. And in terms of top tips, I think one of the most important things within businesses is actually just to ask the question, which I guess is why you've done this, Nick, is like, what does creativity mean to you? And actually getting that within your team, go, what does it mean to you? Because for somebody, it might be drawing a picture. For someone, it might be playing the guitar. For someone else, it might be fishing. For someone, it might be writing a book. And so it's kind of actually assessing as a group of people, as your team, what does it really mean? And then within your business, also asking the question, so what would you like to add in to the creativity mix? Where do you think there's gaps? Because people will already know. People will already know if you ask them the question, you give them space. For me, the other bit is, as I've already alluded to, you have to put time in your diary. This creativity doesn't happen when you've got 5 minutes in between a meeting. And loads of people who come up to me, I'm not creative. It's because you don't provide the space to actually allow yourself to try your own interpretation of creativity. So that creating space is really important. And I think the other bit, truthfully, is, away from the world of work, we're all human beings, right? And I think if we allow ourselves to play, and again, whatever that might mean to you, if you allow yourself play and wonder and joy in your life, you cannot help but be altered in a positive way about that. So then when you're then showing up at work, if you've been happy and I don't know, you've gone and played a team sport or you've gone fishing or whatever it is, when you then come back to work, you then have a different energy and a different view. So whatever it is that fuels you, be it at work, be it at home, that's the important bit. You have to allow the space.
I love it. And in that space, my experience is there are ups and downs, but they're held within this overall space of it. Something is possible, and I can explore this and express this, as opposed to being held in the overall space of this is a worry. I shouldn't be doing this. Why am I here? Will this work? Both of those kind of phrases for me can be in the creative space, but the overall framing of it is it's going to be okay. Something will happen, but I just don't know what it is. It's the fear,
and that's okay.
The fear of not knowing what it is. You haven't, the thing that hasn't yet been created, right? So
and that's terrifying to us in business, because it's all about structure and systems and CRMs and processes, and it's all of the finite, it's all of the definite stuff. This is what my business does, this is how I show up, this is my roles, my responsibilities. Everything within the construct of the business world is in essence systemized. Whereas, so what we're saying is that you have to yes, have a great system, but in order to then respond in a different way, you have to free yourself of that system, which is really hard.
Wonderful. Right, let's open things up, and those unmute in a second and come onto the call, and if you wish, just talk to me and to Em directly. I'm just going to wrap up with some slides before we do that. So just a note here, you know, this is so powerful in business. Here's some fabulous stats from McKinsey. Strong correlation between creativity and financial performance. Like, obviously right, if you think about it, it's obviously right. Kind of feeds back to that Drucker quote, I think at the start. You know, 57% of senior leaders say soft skills are more important than hard skills, so maybe more creative skills as opposed to direct expertise. I don't know what that was. Of the soft skills companies look for, creativity is number one on the list. So just some endorsement there from some stats. So just leave you as we go through to the close of the recorded part, you know, what's the one thing that you're going to act on from today? And Em, I've got a question for you, which is who's the most, for answering in a second, who's the most creative person that you know, and why? And then for everyone, 26th of May, just moving it along, we're going to be talking about the science of happiness, cutting through to the truth of it all, if you like, what works, what doesn't work, and how you can harness positive emotions, positive psychology within your business, with Chris Hyland and his dad, Clive, who's a neuroscientist. Chris is the founder of Happiness Index, which is great business that focuses around this positive emotion in culture and performance at work.